Happy Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Morning Jox here. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you for the next hour, getting you set for another great day around the sports world. We have college baseball going on. We have a champion that was crowned last night in one of the major sports. Maybe another one going to be crowned tomorrow night as well. But yeah, we're going to continue on with the little bit of the topic that we started yesterday. And if you missed yesterday's show, it was just kind of a fun exercise I wanted to throw out there. And we did it for Alabama and Auburn yesterday. And it was make or break games for the upcoming college football season in sense of, if you win this game, maybe you're headed off in the right direction of being in the playoff conversation and reaching the goals that you've set out for yourself. And if you lose that game, then, kind of how bad could things potentially get for you? And so we went through that. We did kind of a deep dive on Alabama and Auburn yesterday. So I have some other schools that I want to get to today, including the likes of Texas and LSU and some others. So we'll hold on to that for a little bit. But again, just like yesterday, you can go ahead and start thinking if you need a refresher on any of their schedules. You are more than welcome to go and look them up. But yeah, we're going to look at some of the make or break games for teams around the SEC as we start to ramp up for our college football season, because SEC Media Days is less than a month away. And that is, at least for me, Damian, I feel like that's when, and I think for most of us here, that's, I guess, the unofficial kickoff almost, is that's where like you really start getting into it. And essentially from that point on until the end of January, it's all ball.
Yeah, and like for me, and I know for you as well, like that's kind of the start of the year. Like it's the opening kickoff.
Yeah.
Like to me, it feels like the opening kickoff, because at that point, we know after SEC Media Days, it's camp season. So it's all about hearing what we hear from different teams and stuff during camp, and we're just counting it down to the actual kickoff. And I think that SEC Media Days for us, and we kind of get because we get the chance to give our SEC predicted order of finish, all our top teams, all our preseason picks for players and positions, and it kind of sets you in the mode of, okay, yeah, now it's time to lock in. We kind of know what our schedule is going to be from that point forward, but it can't get here fast enough. It really can't. I'm itching for something, because we know now. I mean, if you hear Diego Pavia on Bussin' with the Boys after yesterday, I never thought that we'd get to a point where Vanderbilt has entered the chat when it came to because, again, just a couple years ago, Clark Lee did tell us at SEC Media Days he's going to turn Vanderbilt into one of the strongest college football programs. Well, he got a quarterback that believes it already.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here for it. Now that Vanderbilt's kind of, they beat up on Alabama one year, now all of a sudden you can't tell them nothing. Yeah, like if this is what the SEC is going to look like heading into the fall, bring it on. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, apparently SEC football in the state of Tennessee is going to run through Nashville, according to Diego Pavia after this year.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, that was a really entertaining interview that he had with Will and with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan there, and he, if I'm not mistaken, he mentioned at one point that there was another SEC school that offered him roughly $4 to $4.5 million to transfer.
I don't know who.
They offered him $4 million to transfer,
Diego
and
Pavia.
You said no.
Thank you. That's where I was like,
and you said no. So either you're an idiot or you're a liar.
Like, I love Vanderbilt. Maybe he looked at it for the long haul, because people tell you you're not making a 4-year decision, making a 40-year decision. A degree from Vanderbilt University looks absolutely amazing. Maybe
yes,
that's why.
It does. And I think as we all, again, like, great player, absolutely, like, not taking any shots, very good player, but, he's probably not going to be playing on Sundays. So, yeah, maybe getting that, master's degree or whatever he's working on there at Vanderbilt,
exactly. Maybe
that is what the payoff is. But, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, you can't tell me that another SEC school is going to pay you $4 million. Like that.
Nah.
I don't buy that. Now, 1.5. Sure.
But 4? Yeah. Maybe Diego Pavia is the missing piece for a team in the SEC from winning a national title.
Maybe so. I guess there's a couple teams here in this state that don't know how to beat him, so maybe they should have been the ones that were forking over that money. But that was oddly a very interesting interview. I didn't know that was coming out, and so when you start seeing all these clips from Diego Pavia on Bussin' with the Boys, and you're just like, oh, okay, man, he made it count. Let's just say I think he has the attitude of, I don't know how many more of these opportunities I'm going to get, so I'm
lay it all out.
I'm going to take them. Yes.
But now Vanderbilt is, I think it's cool too, because you think about where, and I don't necessarily want to just, bash on Vanderbilt, but let's be real. Where have they been essentially since they've been in the SEC? They have been an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
It's, man, if you slip up and lose to Vanderbilt, ooh, where does that say about your program? That's where the conversations have been. And then this past year, it's, they really do have it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it came at the expense of your alma mater, which you've handled it well since then. But it really feels like when you look at when we get our ballot for SEC predicted order of finish at the SEC Media Days.
They're not going to be in last.
And, I mean, for years and years, we could go straight to 14 and put, Vanderbilt University. Like, they're going to be there. Now it's, are they out of the top 10, or are they going to be in the upper half of the SEC? I just think that it makes the conference better now that the bottom dweller has now reached the point where they're talking that noise. Like, they're here. Like, they're here. I'm cool with it. Perfectly fine with it. But how much of it was last year just a flash in the pan? Like, man, you got Diego Pavia. He ain't sneaking up on us this year.
Mm-hmm.
And how about, do they go back to reality, or is Vanderbilt here to be good? Not great, but is Vanderbilt here to be good?
Yeah, that is a question that we will have answered in a number of months. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for Vanderbilt. So certainly, I know the expectations are much higher than they have been in recent memory, and as they should be. But again, it's just, there's a number of teams and they're in different categories, but similar to a South Carolina, right? How do you respond in a similar fashion of nobody really expected anything from you last year, but now that's changed. Are you going to be able to, deal with that added pressure and like you said, Damien, not being able to sneak up on anybody? But at least for Vanderbilt, as we know, baseball's always been the steady sport for them, where they have been able to take the spotlight from time to time, and they are pretty familiar with Omaha, Nebraska, which is where the College World Series is currently underway. And yesterday, thanks to the bad weather on Monday night, you got 3 games yesterday. Well, I guess 2.5 technically, but you did have to start off the day LSU and UCLA wrapping up their game. Of course, that game got put in a rain delay on Monday night, so they played it early yesterday. The loser of this game was going to then have to play again tomorrow night or yesterday night, which is what happened when LSU beat UCLA 9-5. So LSU, they have now advanced on to today, where they will face Arkansas. But LSU, they put UCLA in the losers bracket with a 9-5 victory. So LSU now 1 win away from returning to the championship series there in Omaha. And so then as a result of that, you had UCLA, who then fell into the losers bracket to face Arkansas. And that was an elimination game that you had going on last night. You also had Oregon State and Louisville. That was the early game yesterday. Louisville, they walk off on a sacrifice fly to eliminate Oregon State. So Louisville, they have advanced to the semifinals. So Louisville's going to take on Coastal Carolina. Haven't seen Coastal in a couple days. They went in there. They said, we're going to win a couple games. We're going to take some time off. So they were absolutely cruising. So now Louisville, they get Coastal. Coastal has to win one of the next 2 games. If they win one of the next 2, you go into the championship series. Louisville have to win both of these games. So you have to win today, have to win tomorrow in order to advance to the championship series. And I saw this. They were, I guess, doing a little feature story on this on ESPN, but apparently one of the guys on Louisville's baseball team is getting married on Friday. And so, yeah. And so they were talking about how if Louisville advances, him and his groomsmen are flying back home. He's getting married on Friday, and then they're going back to Omaha on Saturday to play in the College World Series. So he's either going to get married fresh off of being eliminated from the College World Series or sandwiched in between the semifinals and the finals.
Talk about a whirlwind of emotions.
Yes.
And also it kind of shows that you didn't expect to be here.
That would also be yes. I kind of had that thought too, where I was like, you're telling me you couldn't have said, hey, let's, literally a week later.
Right.
You couldn't have, hey, honey, let's do the next weekend. but
Didn't think we were going to make it this far.
no. But yeah, so that was just kind of an interesting story there with the Louisville team. But yeah, so they hit a walk-off sack fly yesterday to keep their hopes alive. So Arkansas, they were taking on UCLA last night, hoping to keep their hopes alive as well. And for a while, it looked like it was going to be fairly similar to what you got against Murray State. So you weren't going to have one guy going out there and doing everything like Gage Wood did on Monday. But you did go 8 shutout innings. So it was 7-0 Arkansas going into the ninth inning, where UCLA was going to have a major rally. They did make it kind of interesting by scoring 3 runs there in the ninth, but unfortunately, that was all she wrote for the UCLA Bruins. So Arkansas, they advance, and they will take on LSU. So no, we are not going to be able to have 2 SEC teams in the championship series. One of them, but we are guaranteed one. So I guess maybe that's the positive side of it. But so Arkansas, they are getting hot at the right time. Obviously, the last 2 nights for them, very, very good there in Omaha. And we will see if they can carry that on against an LSU team that's kind of had their number this year. But certainly going to be a high-powered matchup there. And again, Arkansas going to have to win 2 more to advance to the championship series. LSU just needs to win 1 of the next 2. And so those games are going to get underway today. So you're going to have Louisville and Coastal at 1 p.m. and then LSU Arkansas at 6 p.m. So that's where you will be able to catch all of that action from Omaha, as we are just a matter of days. Could be Sunday, could be Monday, that we will have crowned a champion in the College World Series. So from Omaha, speaking of Omaha, Alabama has a new quarterback. We'll tell you who he is, what you need to know about the latest commitment to the Alabama Crimson Tide, next on Morning Jox. 6:16 here on your Wednesday morning. Appreciate you tuning it in here to Morning Jox. Conrad and Damian here with you. Coming up in just a little bit, around 6:30, we're going to dive into some make or break games for teams around the SEC this year. So I've got Texas, got LSU, I've got Florida, I've got Georgia. We will, if we don't get through all of them today, we will definitely make sure to get to them tomorrow. But want to get your thoughts on the Courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. Who are your make or break games for some of the teams in the SEC this year with college football playoff expectations? We did Alabama and Auburn yesterday. If you missed it, feel free to send in those as well. We're always happy to take that from you. But a little bit of college football news. If you missed it yesterday, the Alabama Crimson Tide, they landed a new quarterback in their 2026 recruiting class. So I think we all expect that Keelan Russell is going to be the guy. Ty Simpson's going to be the guy this year, it looks like. And then next year, you would assume Keelan Russell would take over the reins and all goes according to plan. You'd get 2 good years with him at the capstone, and then he would be probably a first-round pick in the NFL draft if everything goes the way that him and Alabama fans are expecting. So who would be the guy after Keelan Russell? Well, maybe it'll be Jet Tamala, who is a 4-star quarterback out of Omaha, Nebraska. So he had been committed to Iowa State. So just think about this now. Back-to-back years, you went and got a quarterback that was committed to SMU that no one had really heard of. Now we know a lot about Keelan Russell. And now similarly here with Tamala, you just wonder, is this going to be another situation where, okay, Alabama finds maybe not a diamond in the rough. I mean, he's a 4-star prospect, but, someone that maybe was flying under the radar of the bigger programs a little bit. And yes, I know, I'll go ahead and make the joke. Inevitably, I'm sure tomorrow we'll wake up and he will be a 5-star.
More than likely.
Now that he's an Alabama commit. That's just the way it works, right?
But Bama.
Absolutely. But he is 6'4", 210 pounds. So he's got that's what they call prototypical size.
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL loves those kinds of measurables. But he was a junior this past season at Millard South High School in Omaha, Nebraska, where he accounted for 47 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. So pretty good. Granted, probably fair to also ask, well, what's the level of competition like in Omaha, Nebraska? Probably a little different than in the South, but it's all right. Arch Manning didn't play tough competition in Louisiana, right? And we're all excited for him. So maybe this will be the
and the thing is too, he's got time. His size 6'4", 215. Like, hey,
that'll play.
Yeah, we can coach that.
Mm-hmm.
We can coach that. But hey.
They might need to watch out for Nate Oates too, because I don't know if you saw him, Damian, but some people were sharing some of his basketball highlights.
Don't tell me, dual sport athlete.
He got the hops.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's got some juice.
If the NIL deal is right, I don't see why he can't do it. As soon as you get done playing for the national title, just hop right into conference playing basketball. Just hop right into it. He'll be good.
Yeah, maybe so. So, so Alabama, they land their quarterback in the 2026 class. Again, he could always change his mind. Again, all these things come with, that little caveat of until they sign on the dotted line, nothing is officially official in this day and age of college football, but it does look like Alabama has their new quarterback in Jet Tamala, the 4-star quarterback, the number 1 player out of the state of Nebraska, and he is the number 15 quarterback prospect in the 2026 class, according to 247 Sports. So a little bit of news there for you Alabama Crimson Tide fans. Well, how about the college football playoff? We had some, I don't know if we're going to call this news. We had an update on the college football playoff. So if you're not familiar, the conference commissioners are meeting this week and trying to essentially come to an agreement on what the college football playoff format will be. So there has to be a decision made by December 1st of this year for what the format's going to be for next year, right? So that's the deadline we're looking at here. Fair to say there's some time left, right? You got about 5.5 months to iron this out, but I think we all know that you'd probably just kind of rather have it taken care of, right? So you don't have to worry about it so much. But there was an interesting update that came out of the conference commissioners' meetings yesterday, and it is that they have allegedly decided to start over their discussions on what the college football playoff format will be. Because if you remember, we all started out, All right, SEC and Big Ten, they wanted the 4 automatic bids. The ACC and the Big 12 were going to get 2. But then you had some people pushing back about the 9 conference game schedule for the SEC. Okay, well, then we agreed on the 5-11, right? That sounded pretty good. You get your 5 conference champions that get a first round, or they get the first 5 spots. And then the other 11, it's just who are the 11 next best teams in the country. And it felt like we were kind of moving in the right direction at one point, at least to me, Damien. It kind of felt like, okay, we're progressing here. But now, according to sources, they have decided to start over their discussions. Again, the Big Ten and SEC initially each wanted 4 automatic bids, and 2 would go to the ACC and the Big 12. However, the ACC and the Big 12 weren't okay with that model. Let's see. The SEC coaches then publicly did not support the 4 automatic qualifiers model, so that kind of threw a little bit more water on the fire there. And that's when you had the 5-11 model that came out, like I just discussed. The SEC is now banging the drum that they want to guarantee that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to give more weight to strength of schedule when it comes to determining who is going to participate in the playoff. However, the problem with that, it's kind of subjective, right? You can't.
How do you measure it?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you measure it?
You can't force that. It's just what their opinion is of who the 12 or 16 or however many best teams are and how they want to determine that. So again, that's something you could say, oh yeah, we'll give that to you, SEC, but you can't guarantee that it's going to happen. So maybe that's ultimately the way that goes. But yeah, so the deadline is going to be December 1st when they make a decision on that. But it seems, the Big Tens, they're kind of sitting there like, hey, we've got everything covered, right? We're one of the best conferences. We play the 9 conference games. We kind of are going to dictate how this goes. The SEC, they're going, okay, well, we play a more difficult schedule than y'all. So, we think it's probably fair if we stick with the 8 conference games, you'll stick with 9. It's really not going to be that big of a difference there. And then the Big 12 and the ACC are just there kind of, they're fighting for their lives, but they're also just happy to have a seat at the table. So Who knows what's going to happen here, but yeah, I mean, this just when we're talking about this for so long and so frequently, and then you hear, oh, well, we're just going to start over. Like, come on, like, what are we doing?
We could have talked about this months ago. Like, okay, at least start the conversation there that we're starting over.
Yes.
But I mean, the college football playoff, it's gone from, the 4 best to the 4 most deserving, and even when we extended it to 12, we still couldn't get it right. But
even that, you can't iron out who's the most deserving.
Right.
Well, you might think that one team's more deserving than the other for X, Y, and Z reason.
Right. And sometimes I still think sometimes you just got to trust your eyes. Just look.
Eye test is a good one.
It's a good metric. It's a great bar. And then
they watch all the games, Damien.
Some.
All of them.
Some.
Every single one.
Yeah, it's tough when both teams are kicking off at about 7:30 and you're at a game and you're watching it, but then you also kind of look down at your phone and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Stanford,
not a problem for them.
So Stanford is playing Clemson today. Okay, we'll see what's going on over there. You may have missed the first 35 snaps, but all of a sudden you know that Clemson's one of the 12 best teams. Okay, cool.
Game control.
That's it. That was also a parameter. But I just think that at some point the playoff committee just got to, no matter what number you land on, can't we just get the best ones? However you measure it. But at some point, you got to trust what your eyes are telling you. And last year in the 12-team playoff, you kind of saw that some teams are not built like others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and again, all you have to do is beat them that one game. But when you've got the SMU's traveling to Penn State, and it looks like, SMU probably just they look like they're a little out of their league at this situation. You kind of have to have a conversation. But, who's to say that, we're not on the committee. So we don't
We're
really.
not.
That's why they're paid the big bucks, I guess.
I guess you're right there. So that's the latest on the college football playoff discussions. So hopefully we get some resolution at some point before December, because I guess that's the other option is, well, they just stick with 12 teams for another year. You kick the can down the road, and it's just, again, it's the same stuff with like the House settlement and all of these different things. And you've had so long to prepare for these things. You've had so long to take care of this stuff. Why are we getting to the finish line and then it's just getting dragged out? Again, if there was an easy solution, I'm sure that we would already have it. But yeah, some of these negotiations and the fact that the powers that be cannot get on, I guess, what seems to be an even playing field with where they want college football to go. It's a little frustrating. So we will see what transpires there. Oh, and by the way, of if anybody was wondering, Brett Bielema was at the Cubs game last night, and he decided that that was where he wanted to voice that the SEC should play 9 conference games. So, uh, congratulations, Cubs fans.
It just means more, even up north.
God, this dude won't shut up this offseason. But you know what? Illinois is going to make the playoffs, apparently. They're going to be the next Indiana, according to some people. So we will, yeah, we'll see about that in the fall. But if you're just now joining us, a little exercise that we tried out yesterday, want to get back to it today. Make or break games for teams around the SEC. So yesterday we went through Alabama and Auburn. Today I have Texas, LSU, Florida, and Georgia. So not sure if we're going to have time to get to all 4 of them today. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. So we'll dive into that, get your reaction as well. Some of you already chiming in with what your make or break games are for your teams at 205-834-9450. Your texts are always welcome there at the Courtesy GMC text line. Make or break games for teams in the SEC. That's next here on Jox. 6:33. Appreciate you joining us on the Wednesday edition of Morning Jocks. Conrad and Damian here with you, about to dive into some make or break games for teams around the SEC as we start getting ramped up for college football season. We do have a bunch of texts coming in already. Appreciate you. Some of you chiming in about the playoffs. Some of you sending in your make or break teams. But Bobby chimes in with this text, and he says, kind of funny how Brett Bielema wants the SEC to play 9 conference games when his record in the SEC was 11-29.
Ouch.
Thank you, Bobby.
Man.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one that
right.
shares a little disdain.
Doing all this rah-rah on the way. Like, you been gone. You had your chance. You had your opportunity when you here. Nah, dog.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you get that quarterback from? What conference did he come from? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate the text there, Bobby. So we'll get to your thoughts. You can keep sending in your reactions. I'm sure some of you will have some thoughts on this. So yesterday, if you missed it, for our make or break games, I threw out Alabama at South Carolina in Week 9 for the Crimson Tide, Auburn at Texas A&M in Week 5. Damian threw out Auburn and Oklahoma. So we were kind of split on that one, but that's where we went for Alabama and Auburn. So now today, let's start off with Texas. All right, let's start off with Texas because they're the, I guess, the expectation, what all the experts such as us will tell you, is that Texas is going to be the best team in the SEC heading in, at least on paper, right? So Texas is a little bit of an interesting one. Their schedule it's nothing crazy. We do know the Ohio State game to start things off there is certainly going to be a big challenge, but outside of that, it certainly is manageable. So for me, with my thinking with Texas is, okay, is there a chance they don't make the playoff? There is. Probably pretty unlikely, though, right? Just with what their schedule is, how good we know what their floor is. I find it hard to believe that this isn't going to be at least a 10-2 team at the end of the season. Could be wrong. So that's why for my make or break game for Texas, I went with the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, this game comes late in the season. It will be your 10th game of the regular season at that point. It is on the road at Athens. But again, this for me is the make or break game because this is the next step game, right? This is all right, you had a good first year. You made the postseason. You made it to Atlanta. But when it mattered most, you couldn't find a way to beat Georgia. You lost to them in the regular season. Then you lost to a backup quarterback-led Georgia Bulldogs team in Atlanta. This is your opportunity to say, all right, we can't, we announced our presence last year, but now we want to be taken seriously. We want to prove that we can be the top dog in the conference. And in order to do that, you have to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. So I would go with Georgia, and that being such a big game for Texas. Of course, you do have Texas A&M and Arkansas that are going to be after that. So those aren't going to be, cakewalks necessarily. And I do think, going to Ohio State that first game of the season, maybe that's a loss. And so at this point, if you tripped up somewhere else along the way, this could be the game you need to win to secure a spot in the college football playoff. So again, maybe not as make or break as what we were talking about with Alabama or LSU, where, oh man, what if Texas is 5-3, through 8 games, and what kind of is the narrative around Arch Manning and Texas at that point? But I feel like Texas is going to be a playoff team, but now can you show us that, hey, we can beat the best of the best in the SEC? We saw you beat Alabama a couple years ago. Now let's see what you can do against Georgia, and then I think that's when people maybe start to believe, hey, they can go win a title now.
Yep, I agree with you 100% because so say if you drop the Ohio State game, still one of the top teams in America.
Nobody's holding that against you.
Right. It's about, kind of to your point, what you said about Georgia, it's last year. It's not only did you get them at home last year, you couldn't pull it off. You lost to them in the SEC championship as well. So I think to your point, I think it's a very – Texas has to get over that hurdle because now we know you're good. We know you're elite, but staying there and beating the top team in the conference, that's the only threshold that's the last hurdle you got to jump over. And I think, we saw Arch Manning hop in against Georgia the first time, and he like a deer in headlights.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're the man, big dog. You're going to Athens on top of that. So if you really want to see this Texas team take it up another notch, they got to go to Athens and pull it off.
Absolutely. And it's not going to be an easy thing to do. But again, for your Texas schedule, just looking at, you do have Ohio State, like you mentioned, which is going to be tough. You have to go to Florida for your first SEC game. Could be I mean, going to the Swamp is always difficult, but I feel like we'll learn a lot about Florida kind of in that game. Oklahoma, that's a coin flip, right? It's a rivalry game. If Oklahoma is better, like we expect them to be, maybe this is a game that does look a little trickier there. But Ohio State and Georgia, if you split those two games, I don't see a path for you to not make the college football playoff, barring some crazy upset somewhere that, no one's going to be able to predict. So, again, Georgia would be my make or break game. Damian, in agreement there for the Texas Longhorns, because you have to be able to get over that hump. Now, we saw it last year, had a good first start to your tenure here in the SEC, but now you got to beat the team that beat you twice last year. All right, how about those Georgia Bulldogs? We'll just make the jump over there. Definitely a little bit more difficult schedule than what you're dealing with there with Texas. And this one was an interesting one. I'm sure there's some people out there that would say Alabama just because, again, you beat them in the national championship, but you're, 1-9 your last 10 games against the Crimson Tide, if I'm correct there. And I think that would be a strong one. I think the Auburn game, again, depending on, we kind of talked about that yesterday with Auburn and what that game could look like if Auburn takes care of business, and maybe that ends up being more of an impactful game. But I actually went with Ole Miss for Georgia. And certainly part of that is the revenge factor, but this game comes in week 8. So we're a little over halfway through the season. You've already played Alabama. For the sake of this exercise, assume that they lost to Alabama. Not saying that's guaranteed, but for the sake of the exercise, let's say you lost to Alabama already. All right, maybe you had a close game against Auburn and Jordan-Hare. Maybe you even lost that game. But let's say you split Auburn and Alabama, right? So you have one loss going into Ole Miss. This is a team that, as we know, Damian, and you have pointed out a number of times this offseason, physically manhandled you last year in Oxford. So what happens if that happens again and you now have 2 losses after week 8? You still have a Florida team that we expect to be better and I think would have beat you last year if DJ Lagway didn't get hurt in that game. And you still have to play Texas, as we just discussed. And again, I'm just saying, we saw it last year. I don't think Georgia Tech is that's not a shoo-in game at this point either. So I would go Ole Miss. Again, I think Georgia's going to be very, very good this season. But you have the fact that this is a team that we saw absolutely dominate you last year. If you lose this game, you might potentially be on your second loss of the season after tough games against Alabama and on the road at Auburn. And you still have Texas looming. So this could be one of those games that you look back on and go, man, that was the game that we let slip away, and maybe is why we're on the outside looking in of a college football playoff.
Yeah, I was going to take the easy one and say Alabama because I think that to me, it kind of makes the narrative now that the stars literally have to align for Georgia to beat Alabama because, yeah, you got them the one time, and the one time you got them was the national championship. And a lot of things, and, you can say, okay, well, Jamison Williams got hurt. John Mechie had already been hurt. So you can have the argument. I'm not going to disagree with you, but psychologically, if you can't beat them at home, you can't tell me that it's not in the back of all of these players' minds. Like, no matter how good or no matter how much success we have, we cannot beat this team. Mm-hmm. Because if you go back in that first half, it was almost laughable that Georgia didn't even look like they belonged on the football field amongst everything that had happened in Alabama. With the regime change, players, everything was different, and you were on the verge of getting absolutely boat raced out of there. Now, you could put up a great fight in the second half, but you hang your hat on like, oh, yeah, we could have gotten you in the second half. But I'm in agreement with you that it's Ole Miss because of the fact that I witnessed an Ole Miss team that they have a lot of flair. They are known for their offensive style of the ball. But defensively, I had never seen Ole Miss line up and say, we are welcoming the fist fight with Georgia. And not only are we going to win the fist fight, we're going to beat you down. And that's exactly what happened. How do you rectify that? Because to your point, you look at the schedule, Tennessee is not going to be as good as they have been. And even last year, they found a way to beat them at home. I think it'll be a little bit tough. I think it'll be a little bit tougher to try to say that Tennessee can pull it off at home because I don't think they have the Jimmies and Joes just yet. But Alabama, again, say the Stars do a lot, you knock them off. You are riding high with Kentucky, Auburn. Then the real test is going to be, okay, is Ole Miss just as physical as they were last year? Because they hit us in the mouth, we didn't have an answer for it. Also, is Austin Simmons that dude? Is he going to be just step in and be that next line of Ole Miss quarterbacks that is going to put up numbers and see where it goes from there? So if you drop that one, you have to almost you got some time because you have a bye week after that before you go to Jacksonville and play Florida. So at that point, you kind of just know who you are. So can you rectify that in a short amount of time because you got Florida, you got Texas, and, again, you got a rivalry game with Georgia Tech who took you to 8 overtimes. So I think that for Georgia, yes, they're the reigning SEC champions, but I've even said going into the season that I'm not as high. I do still think they are a good to great team, but I don't think they're that, just because you see the G on the chest or on their helmet that they're going to they still own you first. Like, they're not the Jordan Davises of the world aren't lining up on that defensive line. Like, you don't have the Nolan Smiths and Nolan Walkers and things like they still have to go out and play the game. So it's not just, Georgia's getting off the bus and like, man, we're already down 7. It's no, you got to play them. Like, they have to prove it to me.
Yeah, no, and I think no doubt, Georgia's a top 3 team in the SEC going into the year. I would also say I think they're number 3. But that is a discussion for perhaps another day. So we see you on the text line, 205-834-9450. Y'all wanting to chime in with your thoughts on the make or break games for teams around the SEC. We just did Texas. We gave you Texas, their trip to Athens to take on Georgia, being their make or break game. And then for Georgia, their revenge matchup against Ole Miss there in Athens. So on the other side, we'll get your thoughts, get your reaction. We see you on the phone line as well, Deacon. Your reaction to make or break games in the SEC. That's next here on Morning Jox. 6:50, Conrad and Damien here with you on Morning Jox. McElroy and Kublik in the morning, coming up at 7 o'clock. But we want to spend the rest of our time here with you, our wonderful listeners of Jox, and your thoughts on some of these make or break games around the SEC, the college football playoff discussions, what's going on in Omaha, all that good stuff on the courtesy GMC text line. But first, let's go to Deacon on the phone lines, who Deacon has had a change of heart this morning. How are we doing, Deacon?
Doing good. Except for you, Conrad. You mentioned Vanderbilt and winning again, and I'm just over it. But with Damien, I have had a change of heart. I am not a bandwagon guy, as you both know.
Mm-hmm.
But at church Sunday, the preacher said never miss a chance to talk to somebody about heaven. So, Damien, as a longtime Tennessee Vol fan, I want to bring you into the light and let you join us as Crimson Tide fans. In my lifetime, October of this year, I'll be 60 years old. Now, think about this. My team has won 10 national championships. 10 in just my lifetime. So if it's just for 1 year, let it be just for 1 year, but you should at least grant yourself the opportunity to get a glimpse of Alabama heaven.
My brother.
There you go. Think about it, and we hope you join us.
Man, Deacon,
Thank
I
you,
really
Deacon.
do appreciate that.
That was a beautiful phone call. I'm
That
touched.
is the best recruiting pitch I've gotten from Alabama. That's awesome.
Coming to the light, Damien.
I'm telling you,
It's right
man.
here for you.
That moved me, man. Roll Tide.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Deacon. I've tears in my eyes now. It was hard to collect myself after that. That was
his heart's in the right place.
It absolutely. Well, I mean, when you're an Alabama fan, it normally is, but can't speak too much about you Tennessee fans and where your heart lies. Let's see. Let's go to the text line now. Get your thoughts on these make or break games around college football. Let's see. Antoine chimes in. He says, as much as I hate Georgia, they are still the team to beat in the SEC, not Texas. Texas gets too much love, and their schedule was weak last year. Yeah, their schedule definitely was weak last year, and it's not that much more difficult this year. But, yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely think Georgia is still the team to beat. They are the champions of the Southeastern Conference, and when you beat somebody twice in the same year, yeah, you can't put Texas ahead of them until they beat Georgia. Let's see. Drake, he chimes in. He's a big Florida fan. We'll get to Florida tomorrow. We'll do Florida and LSU tomorrow. But he chimes in. He says, for me, the Texas A&M game is the make or break game for the Florida Gators this season. So we'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow, but appreciate you chiming in there, Drake. Let's see. Talking about the college football playoffs, somebody chimes in. Let the computers pick the top 16, takes the human part out of it, and then we'll just go with those rankings. Okay, so here's the thing with the computer rankings, and the reality is, because we do this from time to time during the football season, they're not that different. If you go and look at what, in a BCS era, what the rankings would have been compared to what they are by the College Football Playoff Committee, maybe there's a couple of teams that would swap places, but, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have 15 of the same 16 teams, right? Like, there's not going to be a whole lot of variance in that. But I do understand, why some people just want to go back to that old format. But I think it's maybe not quite as different as we think that it would be. Steven chimes in. He says, as an LSU fan, I believe our make or break game is actually the very first one against Clemson. If we lose that one, it's 4 years in a row that you've lost your opening game. But if we win, we're on the right path because Clemson is considered by a lot of people to be a playoff team and national championship contender.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the one that I picked. I'll go ahead and tell you that. But that is absolutely a fair argument there because, yeah, you need to win one of these season openers at some point. And
protect the table if you do lose.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. All right, somebody else chiming in. They go, I think the 5-11 model is best for the college football playoff, but but going to a 9-game SEC schedule would be great as far as competition, but look at what it would do to some of these smaller schools. Some of them depend on that money to operate. Talking about the cupcake games. Yeah, that is another thing that you would have to consider there. Let's see. Kentucky's make or break is week 2 against Ole Miss, probably one of the 2 or 3 most winnable SEC games, and they have it at home.
I
mean, they did it last year, right?
No.
You did it last year.
No. Not believing it.
Joseph, and he chimes in. He says, make or break game for Georgia is at home against Alabama. First game against the Tide in Athens for Kirby has to beat the narrative that he can beat Alabama more than once and beat Kalen DeBoer. Hard to argue against that one as well. Appreciate all of you chiming in. Mac and Cube in the morning.